Hello everyone, my name is Jonathan Lau, your global conference speaker who is committed to help you and your organization achieve greater sales success, service experience, and leadership performance. Co-host and co-founder of the Global Success Summit with Shah Nasino. Today at day 4, we're happy under the communication track to have Harriet L. Russell. And Harriet will be sharing with all of you on what does cross-cultural competence mean and having the mindfulness in a global business relationship. So we're excited to listen to what Harriet has got to share with all of you. So stay tuned and enjoy the session. Great. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Global Success Summit. This is Jonathan here. I'm very happy to have Harriet with us today on the day 4 on the communication track. So, hi, Harriet, how are you doing?
Hello, Jonathan, and everyone. I'm so excited to be here. I'm doing great.
Fantastic, fantastic. So for the audience benefit, I'm going to share a little bit about your background so that everyone gets to know you a little bit more on your area of expertise.
Sure.
So Harriet L. Russell runs a cross-cultural training company, and she works with executives around the world and the multicultural teams to work better together. Now, Harriet uses mindfulness to create respect, honor, and trust. From a corporate career in New York City to a translator and a consultant for ABC News at the Tokyo Economic Summit, to jet setting off to Mix Belarus, hosted by the US State Department, Harriet understands it's not personal, it's cultural. And we'll make sure that you do too. Now, Harriet lives overseas for many years. She was named a Paul Harris Fellow by Rotary International for her work in Kyrgyzstan and commended by the Fulbright Commission for her work with the Boston University. She is an active member of the National Speaker Association, presenting at the Global Speaker Summit last year in Auckland. That was where I caught up with her too when I was there in New Zealand, and also a chapter board member of the International Coach Federation. Her latest book is Business is Overseas, Building Cross-Cultural Relationship That Lasts. So it is indeed a privilege for the summit for both Shah and myself to have Harriet to be sharing with us today on really about her area of expertise, right? On what cross-cultural competence, mindfulness in the global business relationship is all about. So Harriet, how has things been at your part of the world?
In my part of the world, it's the middle of summer, and we are glad the rain is gone and the beautiful nature is growing, very green.
Excellent, excellent. So you gave us a topic, and it was on the area of cross-cultural competence. So mindfulness in the global business relationship. And I know you do a lot of, you live overseas, not only in North America. So could you share with us, with the audience today, in the areas people are looking to improve their communication, looking to improve areas that they can become better? So what is cross-cultural competence?
Competence, as you know, is being better at something and having studied it, explored it, and taken it in so that it becomes part of your world. It becomes part of who you are. So cross-cultural competence is recognizing or seeing how cultures are different from each other, but that there's a commonality between all of us. And how do we discover that if not by having experiences, studying, talking to people, reaching out, reaching across borders, even in your own local community? So the competence of cross-cultural work is about being feeling that you can move in any world, in any culture, without a cultural bias, or with at least discovering your own cultural bias and working on that to improve it.
And certainly, just having a good understanding of cross-cultural is really important for communication, especially if you're doing a lot of work virtually these days too, isn't it? With people from different countries, different places, and a good understanding of that is really crucial.
Absolutely. It is a way of communicating, whether it's verbal or nonverbal. But communication also happens, cross-cultural competence and cross-cultural communication happen when someone is also aware of another culture. It can include gift giving, how to present your business card. What are the silent signals that we might make a mistake in a culture, another culture, or the signals that are very important in one culture that have no importance in another one? As you recognize, in Asia, the business card is much more important than in the United States, for example, and exact titling and how you greet someone. The first 30 seconds of your interaction can make or break the relationship at times if the cultural values are very distinct.
Absolutely. And what really inspired you to write the book, which is called Making, Business Ease, right? So building cross-cultural relationships. So what inspired you, and is it because of you living overseas and what you're seeing, and you thought it's going to be really useful for people globally to really enhance the communication in this area?
Absolutely, yes. I feel that when I was a child, I had a reader, a book, that each page had one foreign word. I live in Japan. I sleep on a futon. I live in Mexico. I live in a casa. And that book fascinated me, and I was probably only 6 years old. So it must be in my DNA. And by the time I was 18, I was ready to go overseas on my own, and I lived in total immersion for a decade. And I really feel that somehow my inner self wanted to connect with people, connect with society across the globe. And I love foreign languages. So that is how I got into going overseas and studying and being abroad. But what moved me to move into business with cross-cultural work is that I saw how basic common courtesies and respects were often forgotten because people were not really knowledgeable about the importance of it. And what it may seem in this global world, with, you mentioned technology and a lot of virtual work, it may seem that we're on the surface very comparable in our technology, maybe even the way we dress or not, but really there are deep, deep roots of differences. Something in the virtual realm, for example, would be how someone would start an interview, how you would approach a coaching client. Powerful questioning would be very important in some cultures, but in other cultures, the question isn't accepted because of the hierarchy, and the client wants you to tell them what to do. So coaching becomes consulting instead. So which modality do you use in business to work with other people is really that cross-cultural competence.
And I know that within the book, there is you mentioned about the individualistic and collective culture. Perhaps you could share a little bit, and perhaps you could also share which are some of the countries that actually practices that. Yeah.
Sure. So first of all, remembering that countries have borders and cultures do not. There's massive migration for centuries across the world. And so someone may be from another culture. For example, in the United States, we have so many different cultures that there may be an assumption that a certain dominant culture is the country's culture, but really there are many cultures within a country. With that being said, your question about individualistic and collective cultures, that is one of the greatest differences I find between different cultures. United States, Germany, Finno-Scandinavia, Northern Europe are highly individualistic cultures. I'll take the example of the United States. We are responsible for what we do, and so we will take the praise and the criticism. We will own the mistake and be responsible also for the responsibility and the praise. However, in a collective culture, the team has more importance. The idea of the team doing the project, the team being the one to be praised. If one individual in a collective culture is praised, or criticized in front of their fellows. I'll take the praise because that would be more unusual. If they're praised in front of their colleagues, this would lead to a big shame for them because they were singled out, because it's a collective effort. Criticism sometimes is used as a motivating tool, whereas in the individualistic society like the United States, the stress of being the only one, if you can't do it, then you've failed. You have to keep showing that you're okay, that you can do the job, and only go to the boss or the manager when there is a real question. Whereas in a collective culture, everyone's involved at every stage, and going to the manager or being with the manager's right with the team all the time, telling you what to do, moving ahead as a collective. So it's a very big difference in business. And so Americans working with companies overseas or becoming American managers overseas, and vice versa, managers from other countries coming into the United States may operate differently if they don't understand this fundamental value of individualism. This is also why perhaps Americans and more boldly direct speaking informal cultures like Northern Europe, as opposed to more formal cultures in Asia and other places. This is why we often have to promote ourselves. It seems not humble. It seems very bossy or aggressive, but there is no tribe, there is no team to uplift us as a group. So we have to go out and find our associations, our tribes, our teams, our social gatherings, our places of faith, etc., to create community, because we're so individualistic. And that can also be misunderstood. So it's a two-sided edge of where are you coming from? And that would be a competence to just understand that collective societies work in a very collective fashion, and to be singled out is to lose face. And in an individualistic society, people need a little bit of praise and prodding to keep going, because their whole responsibility is waiting on their shoulders. And that's why my book is called With Ease, because there's stress.
Fantastic.
There's a lot of being alone.
So do you see countries that are in Asia and the Middle East practicing a more collective approach, and North American countries a little bit more on the individualistic approach? Culture.
That is correct. Yes. Middle East Gulf countries, South America is more collective as well. And definitely China, Japan, Korea, and your part of the world as well.
How do you see Europe?
Europe is, it's interesting. Europe is many different cultures, many different countries. And we have to remember also that we can't just categorize and lump into a stereotype. This kind of people is like this. That's just not true. We know that there are ranges of compliance to a cultural norm. And that is why it's so interesting, because we can find people from any place in the world that thinks like us, even if we aren't necessarily what's called the norm, which is great. That's global citizenship. So getting to the question about Europe, I would, if I were to categorize, I would say Northern Europe is more individualistic, and Spain, Italy, the Latin countries are much more family and group connected. They're not collective cultures, but they are more the priority of what may hold importance, may be family and relationship, as opposed to transaction and getting the job done.
Cool.
That's another difference, transactional or relational. So how long it takes to develop a relationship in business would depend upon the culture you're working with and where you're from. Relationship can be very foundational because the thinking may be long-term. Develop the relationship, make sure it's right, because the thinking is we're going to be in this for a long, long time. Whereas American or an individualistic model, or a model where it's more transaction, which includes Germany, many Northern European countries, etc., these cultures will just, you may not even be invited to lunch when you end up off the plane in countries in Northern Europe. It's right to the meeting, right to the transaction. Whereas you could be in China and wined and dined for weeks, and still there's no evidence that you're ever going to get any business. It's still in that transition of let's get to know you. And this can be frustrating for cultures that are new, like the America's a new country, relatively, compared to ancient cultures. It can be frustrating when you have to be accountable to shareholders and a quarterly statement and a deadline. And so this, I want to get it done now, let's get it done now, move on to the next one, is often confusing for cultures that are trying to develop a relationship.
Right.
I hope that question.
That was good. It was good. So if someone is watching the show right now at the summit and they say, great, you know, we understand the importance of cross-cultural development and building relationship, what should I do to start right now? So what are a couple of steps that you would recommend people to begin doing right now? Or is there a model that you have created to help people move through that process?
Well, first I would make sure that if you're not used to that culture, you would definitely get a cross-cultural expert to help you. If you're trying to do business, because your first impression would be important. I would say also understand intercultural English. People are speaking English around the world, but 24% of the English speakers in the world are native speakers and the rest are not. So intercultural English is quite larger than just native English speaking. So understand how to speak, avoid idioms, and understand also when no can mean yes and yes can mean no.
That's true.
So how would someone start? Look at those things, meet some people from that culture, perhaps in your own neighborhood. If you have a go-between, use them. But always remember respect, honor, and trust. My motto. And one way the mindfulness comes into this is looking at how to move from reaction. Reaction is an action done over again that is a habit of ours that we've formed. When we're in a new situation with new people, I believe it's important to watch, be patient, be relaxed so that you don't react, but rather you respond. Response is a peaceful way of, all right, I'm going with the flow. I'm relaxed, I trust, I respect, I honor, and it's different, it's strange, but I'm going to be relaxed because we have a common goal. Reaction is, you're not doing it my way, got to do it this way. How come that person's different? Why don't they understand? Well, that happens in every family, even within the same culture. So we have to move bigger and be relaxed. So I give these 3 A's, which are the awareness, acceptance, and adjustment. So first, awareness is of oneself. This is the mindfulness. What's happening inside my body? Are my shoulders getting tight? Am I starting to talk fast? Am I jumping in? Have I given up and withdrawn? Am I closing my eyes to think, which is common in Asia? What am I doing? How am I being aware of oneself? And then when you're more aware of how you are, you tend to be able to get out of your mind and into your heart or your gut. And with that movement of energy and process, now you're able to be more fully present. So you can be more aware of the other person. Then comes acceptance. I have to accept myself for who I am, even my faults. We are all human beings. If I do something wrong, then I just apologize. If I wish I had done it differently, I remember that, learn it for the future. And then accept the other the same way you would accept yourself. Adjust, the third level, is when you are aware and you are accepting, it's very natural to respond and create adjustments. adjustments that are small, that meet the other person, and then you find a common ground beyond the cultural differences.